Welcome to the Retail Tech Podcast. This is Darius Wasafi, your host, and today I am speaking with Jessica Leitch, head of Frog North America. So, hi, Jessica, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. Welcome to the show. Let's start by a brief background on yourself and how you came to be the head of North America for Frog.
Yeah, absolutely. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm not originally from the US. I came to leading the team in North America by way of being born in Australia and then working in London for about 10 years. I come from a background in service design. So, my real passion is about connecting the front end of a user experience with an organization's ability to deliver and making sure that we get the right investments to the organization as well. Because I really feel like, and in particular in the retail space, those are the things that make the difference. You can have an amazing front end experience that you pour a ton of money into, but the experience gap really comes when what you promise to a customer is not delivered through your organization. So that capability gap is something I'm very passionate about closing. And yeah, so that's what led me to design as a field and to Frog. And so I've been part of the Frog business for 4 or 5 years now, I think it is. So I originally joined to head up the team in San Francisco and then transitioned to leading the team in North America in September 2023 now, I think it is. So it's been a while.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. The you know th- this is I mean Frog is a design company. Is that like the brand itself, right?
Yeah, so the way we talk about ourselves is we are a global consultancy. So we're all about designing iconic experiences for iconic brands. And so we are a group of different capabilities that cross strategists and emerging technologists and designers, as well as product managers. And we're all about trying to apply creativity and strategy to drive growth and reinvent businesses. We've been doing that for the past over 50 years. So we were originally founded back in the 1980s, and in California. We're both in California. So the first Frog Studio actually in the US was in California. So we were, there's a big part of Frog's history, and our founder Harman Esslinger is from Germany originally, and a big part of our story is how he was tapped by Steve Jobs to create the first Apple computers as part of a long-term partnership that we had with Apple in the 1980s. As well as, we have a wonderful history in industrial design. Having designed super iconic products like the Sony Walkman and back when they were Wega, as well as the Snow White design language, and many others since then. But of course, what it means to design iconic products for iconic brands has changed over time. And of course, we've been doing a lot of digital design work since then, and convergent design, looking at physical and digital and how those come together. So that's really where we're doing a lot of our work now.
Do you still do the industrial design work as much? You still do? Okay, so you work with companies to create actual products,
Yeah.
physical products.
We
Okay.
we absolutely do. We absolutely do. We have a couple of fantastic recent case studies. We've been doing a lot of work in life sciences recently.
This is probably a challenge with a lot of like builders or founders or just trying to figure out what's the best design and how is it performing? How is it helping my brand?
Yeah.
How do you assess if a brand's design is actually good or not?
We exist to bring the best of new technologies to brands and organizations, and to help them think through how to apply that to their experiences within a context that makes sense to them. So if you're a retail brand, you're operating in a different context than an insurance brand, say. And, there are different parts of the retail industry that whether it's quick service restaurants or, there are different parts of the industry that have different standards and different expectations. So what good looks like looks different depending on what part of the industry you're part of. So I think, we always take that into account when we look at what good looks like. And there are certain standards that are expected now when it comes to what good looks like in terms of UX patterns and basic interaction design expectations that consumers have. We've all been working with apps and with websites for long enough now to understand what to do when we're confronted with a box or when we're asked to tick something or complete a field. So there are certain expectations that we have around how things will work. And so, when we're looking at whether something is good or not, we're looking at how are you taking kind of the latest in technology and applying that in a context that makes sense to you, and how are you executing on that consistently across all of your channels? I talked a little bit about my kind of service design background, and the reason that I got so obsessed with that was because what we often see is organizations getting a lot of funding into those touch points that are the customer facing touch points, the points that are kind of the end point where the customer sees, but where we see a lot of the failures are actually within the organization, having to live up to the expectation that's set by those customer facing touch points, and that's where we see a lot of kind of the good being being let
Hmm.
down. And so a lot of the assessments that we do look at not just those kind of customer facing touch points, but what goes on in the background and what goes on in the organization to actually enable what a good experience should look like for your organization. So it varies, and setting your own benchmarks is a good way to be able to check your progress against particular investments that you're making. So yeah, I think it's very contextual what good looks like. But there are certainly some standards that people have now and expectations that they have that are kind of cross industry and cross brand too that you need to bear in mind.
Okay. From my point of view, I guess good would mean that, of course, we are getting good results. That means we are getting repeat. So, like a good measure of a good design for me, or if our app is
Mm,
good or not, is if customers keep coming back.
yeah,
If
yeah,
they just come once and they don't come back, that
yeah,
there is a problem either with the service
yeah,
or the design or both.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can definitely think about it on the individual user level. So you can think about, are users achieving what they need to achieve? Are they getting the things done that they want to get done? And they doing it in an effective way and an efficient way? And are they enjoying that engagement? But you should also think about, is that product or service achieving what you want to achieve organizationally and at a business level too? So are you delivering it in a way that makes sense and are you making money from it? Or if you're not looking to make money from it, you're getting some other benefit from it. And then, I mean, the third area to look at is, what are you contributing societally from that? Are you giving, are you, is this something positive that's happening? Is it taking away? So there's kind of three different levels to look at it on. Certainly the individual user level is definitely one, but I think it's also worth looking at is it doing what you need to do from a business level too? Because um, not all businesses need to be experts in everything. Some are better than others at delivering some of these experiences.
Yeah, of course, nobody is an expert in everything, even if they
No,
think so. So,
exactly.
the the way that the world is changing right now has really
Yeah,
taken all of us by surprise. Even
yeah,
people that have been in technology for all of their like professional life are
yeah,
finding it hard to keep up.
yeah,
Do you see
yeah.
the same with your clients and also internally in your team?
I mean, it's a fascinating time. It's definitely we've definitely seen an acceleration for sure. And we've seen an acceleration in the way that generative AI has kind of impacted, in particular, the part of the consulting industry that we're part of. And it is absolutely impacting our clients too, and impacting the type of work that they're wanting us to do with them. Um, it was a big part of we do this futures report every single year, and it was a big part of the report that we published just a little earlier in the year. We actually did a whole section on what we call kind of machine visions, which is all about understanding the ways that AI is affecting our lives in ways that we're not prepared for. And some of the trends that we saw were looking at things like zero UI. So the potential for new products and services that aren't going to have a user interface in the way that we expect, or the way that we're used to right now. Those patterns that I was talking about before may not be around for as long as we thought they would be for, and the future of products and services will look different. Looking at things like engaging in our natural language is something else that came out of that report. And so, thinking about what the future could look like in terms of how we engage with products and services, and how we actually have those kinds of conversations that are much more natural language based, rather than engaging with organizations through their apps or websites. We're witnessing a shift from this kind of app centric kind of engagement to natural language based experiences. And we're seeing journeys like transcend platform boundaries through voice recognition, and we're seeing some of these kind of frustrating, disconnected interactions become really transformed into much more integrated, holistic, omni-channel experiences. And so, yeah, things are moving very, very quickly, and we're seeing things move a lot faster than we had anticipated. In the retail space, I know even just at Christmas, I think retailers were probably shocked by the number of people who used large language models to put together Christmas lists, or even bought directly from large language models recommendations as part of their Christmas shopping. And just the rate of adoption has been phenomenal. And I don't think it's not going away. It's only accelerating.
It is definitely mind-boggling how
Yeah,
fast these main models, especially the main models, are
yeah.
innovating and releasing new products. And that is a challenge with, I think, everybody, mostly, on the business side.
Hmm.
So I was actually listening to a podcast, a venture capitalist that is also a coder, which is great to see. And
Yeah,
he had mentioned that over the weekend he built this agent that
yeah,
did a specific task for him without doing
yeah,
any coding.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I had a short conversation, and I said, okay, this is awesome, but that the model that you use is going to be outdated in next week. How are you going to keep up? How are you going to keep updating your agent? Like this is like yes, getting an agent started is really good, but that agent is probably going to be outdated, or it's not going to have the latest service or back end in I mean really short order. So this is
Yeah.
where I'm thinking, because the other part, and I've done a lot of like consulting as well. I've worked at
Hmm.
Accenture. I've done, like a lot of consulting. And that's another one of my questions, is that what is going to happen to the consulting business, especially system integration,
Hmm.
with this, all these new tools where like you don't need so many software developers anymore, at least to do a project. And right now with MCP, concept protocol, that Anthropic just released, agents are going to be able to talk to each other like APIs talk to each other.
Hmm.
How is the consulting business changing I mean, I'm sure you see it already, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the future potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely changing. I mean, I think that I spoke about how Frog was kind of founded on this idea of designing kind of iconic products for iconic brands and how that's changed throughout the years. And we started with industrial design and how that moved to digital design and then convergent and regenerative futures. And now we're in this age of data and AI. And this is going to change the way that um, experiences look and feel, but it's also going to change the way we work as well and what people are asking from us. So, I think it's changing the role of consultancies on a number of different levels. I think that people will be asking different things from us. I think that already people are asking for, more iterations done faster to a higher quality level, I think. So there's an expectation that generative AI tools will be used in everyone's daily workflows. And, of course, those are things that we're already doing, have been doing for a while. And I think that there's an expectation that, it's not the data and AI, that it isn't a separate team. It's everyone's, it becomes the foundation of how we do business now. So I know from a frog standpoint, it's our kind of like number one priority for this year, and it has been something that we've been doing for a really long time, building products and building services that are founded in data and AI. And I think it is going to be the next generation of consulting. Like I don't think that I think we're at the precipice of a huge shift in what the market's going to look like. And I think that people will be continuing to ask us for different services. And I think, it's going to mean the same thing for brands as well. I mean, this is going to change the way that consumers engage with brands. Generative AI is driving this kind of potential disintermediation between a brand and a consumer. So when a brand may have gone to a website or an app in the past, instead they're going to go directly to a large language model and take a recommendation from the large language model, which means how do you how do you have someone know about you? You have to, instead of doing SEO, you have to find a way to influence the large language model in so that they're recommending your brand or they're describing your brand in a way that you want a consumer to understand who you are. You also have to start thinking about other places that you're going to show up. So if you've not got people regularly going to a website or an app, or if they're not completing tasks through a website or an app and engaging with you in a way that they used to, then you have to think about other places where they are. Are they on Roblox or are they on TikTok? So where are these people, and how are you going to have them take notice of you? How are you going to differentiate yourself? Is it going to be through AR and VR experiences in these places, or is it going to be through service delivery? Does that become the differentiator actually when we move away from an environment where you have these kinds of websites and apps, which is a way to demonstrate your brand, and instead people are engaging through these LLMs or even agent to agent? So there could be a situation where we have my agent is talking to a brand's agent, and actually they never talk to me because that's something I've decided that I don't need to interact with a brand directly on. Whereas, for shopping, I'm always going to do it myself. I'm never going to outsource that because I like to do that. But
Yeah.
for other things like searching for flights or something like that, I'm ready for an agent to take that over for me. So that's but there's a potential huge disintermediation there between the consumer and the brand. And yes, the agents will talk to each other, and then so you're also the new version of SEO also has to accommodate for my agent, not just for me. So it's a really interesting new kind of paradigm. And so from a consulting and an agency standpoint, we have to be ready to help brands find their way in this new world, help them find new places to show up, help them to define this new age of experiences that are driven, that make sense for them and that help them to define their kind of brand and who they want to be and to consumers when these, these things that we've been relying on, these apps and websites start to fade a little bit more into the background.
That's a really good point as far as the, experience and how a customer will engage with a brand.
Yeah,
And I've had
yeah.
many conversations and have heard a lot of people talk about the website is going to go away. And, but the only thing that I can figure out right now is that we have a ton more questions right now than answers.
We do, yes.
And sometimes we're trying to make decisions based on questions rather than answers. And I think
Yeah,
that's the problem that I see a lot of people just trying to jump in, trying to go a direction without really giving themselves the room that it could not be the ultimate. And that's a challenge that I see, especially in retail.
yeah. I think that we're in the messy middle. So I do think that, in particular for retail, I think that there has been investments in generative AI POCs that haven't reached maturity yet. And I think that it's very difficult to to navigate all of the channels that retailers have to manage in order to deliver a good experience to their customers. And I think that at this stage, agentic AI, generative AI has I'm not sure that it's improved the experience yet. I think we're
Mhm.
still in that messy middle part where we will get there, absolutely, but I'm not quite sure that we're there yet. And so I think that it is, I have no doubt we will get there and it will improve. And maybe it will take us to that holy grail promised land of personalization that we've just been waiting for and trying to achieve through omnichannel for years and years and years and just never quite getting. And I think this is the real chance for us to do that, to get to that land where we can anticipate what someone wants before they want it, or actually we can just respond instead of having to guess, that it becomes a pull rather than a pull on behalf of the customer rather than a push on behalf of the organization. So I think we will get to that promised land, but I think right now I think you're right. I think there's more questions than answers, and but we have to try these things, and if you're not, and I think it's essential that we are trying, and that retailers are trying different. And thinking about these things strategically as well, not thinking about it as, and thinking about this, generative AI and agentic AI as potentially new channels, and how are you going to manage that within your kind of omni-channel strategy?
I think that's exactly the point that I wanted to also, and I try to get people to think about is that
Yeah.
there are a lot of questions, not
Yep.
enough answers, but there is one answer that I personally believe is that if you don't experiment right now, if you don't
Yeah,
get
you
your
have
feet
to.
wet right now, you will be at a major disadvantage next year, maybe even 6 months from. I don't know. I mean, things are moving so fast. So that's the challenge that retailers, just focusing on retail and brands
Hmm.
are facing right now is that a lot of
Hmm.
people, retail, let's be honest, is a very slow moving industry, especially at the larger end, enterprise end. Now, I'm
Hmm.
happy to see that a lot of really large companies, like even Walmart, is moving very robustly, and I'm really happy to see that. And I
Yep.
think that gives hope and inspiration to a lot of other people. But yeah, not trying is the biggest mistake right now, and that's where like your role as an advisor, as a
Hmm.
trusted partner becomes really interesting because you're trying to navigate an organization towards something that has so many uncertainties in it. And how do you
Yep.
actually do that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on like how do you navigate that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about first broaching the conversation. And I do think that you're right. It's about making sure that that the right explorations and experiments are happening. And I think that retail is retail's a tough industry. There's not always a ton of money to go around to run experiments. It's all tied up in trying to get the most out of what's happening right now. So it's it can be tough to find the space to do those kinds of things. But I do think I agree with you. It's essential. The way that we tend to try and talk to our clients about it is um, through a lens of right now we would think that they should be kind of exploring AI, and if they're not already doing that, they definitely should. So you need to be exploring and demonstrating Gen AI use cases and uncovering kind of value pools and prioritizing those and then starting to see on the basis of those explorations where you should be changing different parts of your business. And then you should be starting to think about scaling. So if you've started to run these experiments and you've identified different parts of your business where you think that Gen AIs can improve the business, you need to start to scale those teams and build these kinds of Gen AI factories. And so then once the typical process we would go through from kind of exploring to scaling is around setting up like data and infrastructure requirements. So getting together like a Gen AI factory or doing data migration or getting the right technology ecosystem into place. And then, once things have scaled, it gets to, we kind of get to that kind of ubiquity. So, how does everyone kind of embrace generative AI? And, how do you take a step back and look at the challenge and the opportunity at an organizational and a market level? So, how does it augment your organization? What does your digital operating model look like? How do you change the organization to scale even further? So, we tend to try and work them through those stages. But it very much starts with like, how do we explore first, prove something out? And I don't, yeah, I mean, I have seen like a lot of POCs that are kind of disconnected from the organization too. So but there is a sort of leap of faith that you have to take to trial actually implementing these into and connecting them up and trialing and proving things out. So that's the next step from having these kinds of standalone POCs as far as we're concerned. And it's still early days. As I said, it's like not
Right.
it's really just about, as you said, getting your feet wet and not being left behind.
Something that I've experienced myself and I'm trying to get better at
Yeah.
is the concept of experiment design.
Yes.
Many organizations really don't know how to design good experiments.
Mm-hmm.
The experiments are either too large or too
Yep.
small. And I think
Yep.
maybe with the generative AI tools that we are having right now, we will be able to do more experiments faster, cheaper, and get the results. So that's like one of my hopes.
Mm-hmm.
And a question for you is that do you actually engage with customers at the level of like designing experiments and then actually implementing and running it and then the results, that whole cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. We are very we're very data driven, and we don't like to make assumptions. So the way that we apply our process, we have this process called Imagine, Make, Scale. So where we'll come up with a concept, and we will build it. We like to prototype. We like to make. We're very much makers and builders too. And part of that making process is about experimenting and testing it and getting it out into the market and doing an alpha and a beta version before we get into the scaling. And so this applies to physical product, it applies to digital product as well. So we definitely like to do these kinds of experiments. And, it can take different forms, different language. So sometimes it's called piloting. But we definitely design experiments where we gather different types of kind of qualitative and quantitative data, where we set out what we would expect to see from the experiment. And we set out the time frame for the experiment and we run it. And then we come back and see what we're learning, and we have certain touch points throughout the time period where we check in and we check whether we need to tweak things as well. But we absolutely do that with clients, and it's one of the actually I was talking to someone about it just this afternoon, doing something with like a large client of ours. It's one of the things I love to do the most, actually. I love to get into the market because you really find yourself doing everything in those situations, like building things with your hands, going out to the hardware store, picking things up. It's just you literally start to do it. You're like nailing things into the walls. It's actually the most fun that you can have, I think, actually running experiments.
It is. It is. One
Yeah.
of the things that I like to do personally to get myself like more connected with the real world is I'm
Yeah.
trying to learn carpentry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Wonderful.
and I think I just find it really interesting to learn how to like put things together, how to make them. And of course, I'm really terrible at it right now, but I'm hoping that. But it is something that I think like as you when you mentioned that going to the hardware store, that reminded me of myself. Um, the let's talk a little bit about the emotional side of brands.
Yeah.
We talk about all this technology that's in the back end. The customer shouldn't really even know about what's happening in the back end. They just
Yeah.
see the front end, that the experience. And of course, that doesn't change with generative AI or whatever. The customer, maybe the experience right now is changing, going from like keyword search into conversations, but the
hmm
look and feel is really what customers will remember.
hmm
And the brand is so important. I want to ask you, like, what's the hardest thing for people, like builders, that companies that you work with, in designing an effective brand? What are the biggest challenges people face? And I face this myself every day. So, uh, I'm really interested to learn like that's it's not a science. It's almost like an art.
Mm, it
Or maybe
is.
it
It's
is
very
science. I
much.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's very it is I mean it's a combination of science and art. That's definitely language that we use. Um I and I was actually going to comment just on the previous topic. I actually love that idea of you saying that you were terrible at carpentry, because I feel like that's everyone's terrible at something when they start it for the first time, and that should, people need to remember that organizationally too, that things aren't going to be perfect when you try them for the first time. It's going to take a while for you to get these things right. So don't try and measure it against things that you're already expert at, because you were never going to try if you because it's going to feel bad, and you need to try and you need to experiment and fail, and that is much better than not doing anything at all. So I think it's a, sorry, you said that to me and I was like, that's like the perfect
Yeah.
example
Don't be
for
afraid to
for
start being
no.
terrible. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Don't be afraid to start by being terrible, because that's how everyone starts. No one is an expert to start. Um, but on the brand topic, like I think the hardest, right now, it's really interesting. There was a Forrester report that came out last year that said that that it is the worst time to be a US consumer, from a brand loyalty standpoint, in 16 years. So they have this report that the CX index that they look at, which measures brand loyalty across like three different dimensions, like effectiveness, ease, and emotion. So how effectively does a brand meet my customer needs? How easy was it to work with the brand? And how did interacting with the brand make me feel? And brands in the US are kind of failing across all of these dimensions. And it's so interesting that last year was the lowest level, because the brand because brand loyalty hit a high in 2021 during like the height of the pandemic when and I think you would know at the time retailers in particular they just went way out of their way to create brand loyalty and to meet customers where they were, and they invested in digital, and they although their retail locations many of them were closed, they really went out of their way to ensure that they were still engaging with customers and to continued to find ways to show who they were through these investments that they've made in their customers. But since then, it's there's been a decline in investments in brand loyalty and in CX, and it's really showing up in brand loyalty metrics. And so it's from a brand standpoint. There was this crazy statistic that was in the report. Only 3% of consumers believe the brands serving them are truly customer obsessed, which means, which
Hmm.
is this term that Forrester uses to describe organizations that put customers at the core of their business strategy, which is just so
Wow.
bad. It's so bad. But in 2021, the 80% of US consumers express loyalty to at least a few brands, but now that has just gone through the floor. So when it comes to what good looks like from a brand standpoint, it is those kinds of measures around like how well how do they make you feel? And then how well do they meet up to that expectation throughout every interaction that they have with you? So is it easy to work with them? Do they meet your needs? Does it feel like it's consistent? Does it feel like they're investing in you? And in particular, I think for retail, it's a very complicated dance to keep that consistency across all of the different channels that they have to manage. And uh, I think that it's something that brands have continued to struggle with, like to deliver that kind of brand experience and that seamless CX, like across like this ever expanding kind of range of channels and experiences. Um, and to manage the expectation created by marketing and then the experience reality delivered by your customer organization and coordinating across CX and operations and digital. It's just really been out of reach of most brands, I think. So, when it comes to brand experience, I think that it's those three parts, emotion, effectiveness, and ease that really matter. And it's almost worse actually if someone is really loyal to you, but they have a series of bad experiences. It's much
Mhm.
harder to there's another piece of data that I saw. I think it's actually harder to win a customer's loyalty. It takes about six good experiences, but it only takes them three bad experiences to churn. So it really it's a huge challenge, even if they're emotionally connected to you. And I mean, the other area that where we're seeing a lot of churn is when, from a data and AI standpoint, when brands are collecting a ton of data and they're not having it show up in the experiences that are being delivered, people find that incredibly frustrating, and that undermines the brand's perception in their minds as well.
How do you define a loyal customer? What does that
Um,
even mean?
yeah. I mean, I think to me, a loyal customer is someone that returns over and over to your brand, and someone who a repeat purchaser to your brand. And I think there's different levels, right? So, and organizations will define it on different levels. You can have at a very basic level, I think it's a repeat purchaser, and someone, and a switcher would be when they're kind of looking to, um, replace whatever they're doing with your brand with another brand. And then, a level above that would be kind of an advocate. So someone who talks about your brand in a really positive way with other people and, with their community and finds ways to advocate on behalf of your brand within their community or with other groups of people. So yeah, I think at a very basic level, it's kind of that return purchaser.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely. And the advocator would be
Yeah.
like a godsend, right? I mean, those are the ones
Yeah.
that you want to do
Yes.
whatever you can to do that,
Yeah.
and then do it. And then the consistency of it, I think long term is
Yeah.
also very important. Is to how do you engage? Like that's the engagement part of it is even if somebody is loyal right now, how do you
Yep.
keep them loyal? Because people
Yep.
are constantly bombarded with different messaging, new brands, new
Yep.
experiences. So that's the other challenge.
It's a huge challenge. And I think it's become even more of a challenge in the past kind of, I was talking about the decline in kind of consumer experiences. I think with a decline in kind of budgets and fears about the economy last year, and I think that there was definitely a rerouting of budgets towards loyalty programs and retention mechanisms rather than acquisition mechanisms, because of course it's cheaper to keep the customers than you
Mhm.
have rather than to find new ones, acquire new ones is always more expensive than keeping the ones that you have. So um, there's some really interesting statistics around 9 out of 10 companies in the US investing in their loyalty programs last year and trying to use those as a mechanism to retain customers and keep them loyal, but finding that it's not probably not quite hitting the mark and maybe needing to think about loyalty potentially as a bit of an outcome rather than necessarily a program, and thinking about how do you not just have a loyalty program, but how do you integrate what you have from that loyalty program and what you've learned from all that lovely first party data, in particular for retailers, into the way that you're delivering services and personalized experiences, because that seems to be increasingly the expectation of customers. If you're gathering data, learning about them, they expect for it to show up in personalized experiences, and that is a huge way to breed loyalty. And if they don't see it show up, that is the thing that turns them off. It feels like it's not an equal transaction. So there's yeah, that's definitely becoming part of the loyalty equation for sure.
In your role as being the head of the organization in the US, I'm sure you have to probably one of your biggest concerns or goals is to have a good team, a top-notch
Oh,
team.
sure. Yes.
Can you tell me how that operation or that side of your work has changed with Gen AI, or has it?
Yeah, it has. It definitely has. We our team are using probably on average 4 to 5 Gen AI applications. Each individual is using between 4 or 5 applications in everything that they do. So whether it is the large language models for support on research, or whether it's image generation or video production, or whether we are creating models to support particular programs or to help us with being an extra team member. We're absolutely using generative AI to be an extra pair of hands basically for us. So it's definitely something that uh, our early adopters have been doing for quite a while now, and I think that we have many of those. You know, frogs are known for being incredibly curious and for probably being like the pre-early adopters, I'd say, like even before like they're the ones who are like searching the internet, like looking for the latest thing that's come out, and you know they're
Hmm.
always the ones to sign up. Like my colleague Jason and I, we always talk about how, you know, when it comes to physical AI, we're always like the first people on the list to buy whatever product's coming out. So it doesn't matter if it works or not, we're going to get it. So, you know, all the frogs are like that. So very, very curious. And we haven't, we have sets of tools that we recommend that people use as well. So originally, you know, 12, 18 months ago, we did a series of pilots where we actually trialed the implementation of a range of different Gen AI tools in some different projects. And we looked at how that improved the performance. So did it improve the quality of the project? Did it improve the outcome? Did it improve the team experience? And you know, did it improve financials, all those kinds of things. And you know, we use that to make kind of recommendations to our teams on how to use some of those applications going forward. But as I said, people take it upon themselves to kind of research as well what the latest is. So yeah, I think on average, yeah, people are using kind of at least 4 to 5 different applications on a daily basis.
Is is Gen AI a consideration interview, in interviewing for new roles and even designing new roles in your
Mm.
organization?
I think it's an expectation that anyone who is coming in, you know, whether you're a designer or a strategist, I mean, certainly in the emerging technology space, I mean, our people who work in that space are um, probably the most curious of the lot. So it's their responsibility to understand what the latest technology is and to be able to recommend that to our clients. And to have tried it themselves so that they understand the implications of it. So I would say it's you know, and I would say that's the same for many organizations in our place, that it would be an expectation that that you're able to use these tools effectively.
Yeah, I mean it's like knowing how to use email or Microsoft Office.
It is,
It's
yeah, it
almost getting
is.
to
It
that
is.
point, correct?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And I think it's interesting. There's been a lot of writing about it, and I think it is a tool. So it's a set of tools for experienced designers. It doesn't replace creativity or creative direction or taste or expression, but it is definitely very powerful in the hands of people who have that kind of creativity, you know, in the hands of great creative direction, in the hands of those people who have well-refined kind of taste and strategic, you know, understand what kind of strategic direction that they're looking to take. And it's only going to get more powerful, you know, once we've moved beyond that kind of basic prompt engineering now into you know, we're starting to the models are starting to understand context a little bit more, and they'll only get more powerful in understanding that context and where they need to jump in and where they need to when they're not required. So they'll only get more powerful from that standpoint, and you know, become that extra team member.
Yeah, the roles are also changing. Like for example,
Mm.
we had to come up with something new because I
Yeah,
couldn't find something that fit, and we called it a
yeah,
conversation engineer. Because a
yeah.
prompt engineer that doesn't really explain what we're looking for. A conversation
No.
engineer, conversation designer.
Yep.
So these are all like even new roles that are a combination of multiple existing roles, like a product
Yep.
manager, designer,
Yep. Yeah.
software developer. Are you seeing the same?
Yes. So it's really interesting that you say that. You know, we were talking a little bit before about how we have this kind of like we're betting on this kind of natural language based future where we're going to break free from having to tick boxes and complete forms on websites and applications, and that's how we get tasks done. Instead, we'll just be able to speak or type in the way that I'm talking to you now. We'll have to be able to, services and products will have to be able to take instructions on a natural language basis. And so there will be a need for voice or conversational designers to be able to design those kinds of experiences and those translations. But also to create these kind of brand voices too. So, there becomes an opportunity for an agent of a brand to have a certain voice that becomes a new channel for you to represent your brand. And so you need someone who is experienced in, conversational design to design how you want your brand to show up. So it becomes, yes, there's tons of new jobs that are going to emerge. Absolutely. I'm super excited. I'm super excited about the opportunities on that front.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation. Is there anything that you would like the audience or to listeners to actually do for like to get in touch with the organization? I will definitely add links to all of the reports and everything in the show notes, but like yourself personally.
Yeah, I mean, I would, if you're interested in reading our Futurescape report, it's our yearly trends report. It's just recently out. And I mentioned that above all else, our frogs are curious and early adopters. So we kind of create this report annually in an effort to encourage them to channel that curiosity into a series of reflections on what we should expect to see trend-wise for the coming year. So would definitely encourage everyone to, if you're interested, to have grab a copy of that from our website, and we'll put it in the show notes for sure. And there's some really interesting things in there, not just on, we talked a lot about AI, but also, forces of nature. So how technology and culture and business will impact people and planet, and maybe also for the retail audience, there could be some interest around this section that we have on ebb and flow, which is just about what consumer behaviors and business practices will be replaced next.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. It was a pleasure meeting you and speaking with you.
Same here. Thank you so much.